What is midlife and what are the biggest hurdles or pains in midlife for men? And how is midlife for you? These are some of the questions that I'm going to share some insights around with you in this video. Before diving into this, first of all, I know that the world we're in now, we are live and we live in a TikTok, everything served in 30 seconds or less world. And this is not only for the young people, it's also for people at my age, at your age, and maybe even for older people. So I got an invitation for you that this video and the videos that I'm doing will not be the same for you. And what I mean by this is that I am going to share something with you from my heart to your heart, from my maybe soul to your soul. And I'm not going to do it in 60 or 30 seconds or less. I'm actually going to share it from here. And I invite you to take this in, to absorb this. And with some notes to that, first of all, let me just remove my screen here so I can see. First of all, it might be a new adventure opening up for you, not only for me, but also for you. And second, the more people who actually looks at this video and even engage in it, that was a good one, by liking it or commenting on it or subscribing to it or all of those, the more YouTube algorithm will see this and help the video get out to even more men. All right. So all in all, this is a win-win-win if you also engage with me here. Cool? All right, let's get into it. First of all, who am I? Why do I share these things about men in midlife? My name is Michael Pluszek. As I speak now, I am 51 years old. I live in Copenhagen in Denmark in north of Europe. And English is not my first language. I'm doing my best and I like to speak English. But if somehow and sometimes you find the words a little awkward or something like that, thank you for the patience. Okay. I am a proud and single dad to my soon to be 14-year-old daughter. And I live with her most of the time. Most of my adult life has been around businesses. It's been around creating, growing businesses, and it's also been around personal development. And my experience has been that those go very, very close together. A few years ago, I had one of those life experiences that nearly removed me from this planet. Long story short here, but a 6 year ongoing relationship with, I thought, the woman that was the dream for me. It was the one that I should be with for the rest of my life, that I should grow very like intimate and loving and like you watch them in the movie relationship with. And I went for the first time in my life so much into this relationship to show love, to be that loving man, to be that guy that we watch in some of the movies at least. And what I see now is that those 6 years of relationship, and it's not the first time this happened for me, but I'm not going to go too much into this in this video. But this relationship, 6 years of manipulation, of lying, of cheating, and looking back, when it finished, I was drained. I mean, drained. And it's like she was this kind of a vampire who was just sucking all of my life energy out of me and left me there like an empty shell, probably to move on to the next she could suck life force out of. And when it finished, I really didn't know what was up and what was down. I had no clue at all. And what I found out and why it finished like it did was that she was actually married. I never found out if they were really married, but to another man. And for, I think it was like 15 or 20 years or something. And she even had a daughter that I didn't even know about. And I don't know how many men can relate to this part, but it's very important for some of the things that I'm going to share in this video. And the big thing for me is that this experience, and when it stopped, that was the biggest crash in my life. And I've had some rough challenges, I had some big crashes, but this one was the biggest. And that was the experience when I found out she had another man, when we finished it, and the way that she treated me, even in the end, when I knew that she had another man, all of this together, I was ready to say goodbye to the world. And it felt like really like I broke into 1,000 pieces. I had this picture, and one of the actually a woman who helped me in the beginning to some of the things that I'm sharing here. She described the picture of, you have this Chinese vase and you drop it on a, maybe on a concrete floor, and it's just like all over the place. That was how I felt, broken into thousands, maybe millions, maybe even billions of pieces. That's how it felt. And it took me years after this, not days, not weeks, not months, but years to, and that was an ongoing process, and it still is, release a lot of traumas from my body and my system, trapped emotions, and also beginning on a whole new journey in my life, a journey where it was very much about figuring out, who am I? When I look behind all of the masks, the walls that I built, the protections, the armor of people not getting in there, of people or experiences not hurting me, I released and I released and I released all of this. And the journey and the adventure for me became, who am I? Who am I when I'm not the businessman? Who am I when I'm not the marathon runner? Who am I when I'm not this and this and this? Who am I? And that took me years also. And as I said, it's not like bam, everything was like, at least for me, it didn't work like this. It's an ongoing process, and I'm still on that journey, getting more and more excited about it, actually. So I'm not in this video going to dive too much into all of this. I'm just going to mention it, and I will be back, as somebody I think said. I will be back and share more of all of these things, because I know and I understand and I believe today that this is some of maybe the most important work that we can do, especially in midlife. And I'll come back to why and also how. But in this video, I'm going to share what I actually mentioned in the beginning. That was, what is midlife? How is midlife for you? And the biggest hurdles or pains for many men in midlife. And what I realized and what I experienced myself was, as I let go of a lot of things and I began to be more and more curious about, who am I behind all of those walls, all of that armor, all of that protection. I also experienced something very interesting. I experienced a new way of living my life, a new way of being in this world, a new way where those things that meant so much to me before, they meant much less now. And together with that, I also began to experience not mindset stuff, but actually me being stuff, me being the human being, me, Michael, being here, me feeling myself, me being curious and adventurous. Is that the word? Adventurous, of who am I in this experience? Who am I in this experience? And be curious about this, not be ashamed of it anymore, not feeling guilt of the emotions coming up or me not being good enough, but actually being very curious. And with all of that also came a new experience for me, an experience that I call it life force, because it was kind of like I instead of me trying to figure things out and trying to run and run and run, it was like more and more I experienced that the energy came from within. And it was a new, very interesting energy, life force. Also, because it was kind of like this was a it was around 6 years, this relationship. And before that, I was in a marriage with my daughter's mother. And that went on for that relationship was for the same length. So it was kind of like a long period of my time. And men, I understand, can relate to this. Maybe they are in a long relationship for many years. Maybe you are one of those, and maybe children are growing up. And suddenly, because that was what happened to me, suddenly it was like I woke up, and one thing that I realized was that my health was not as it was 20 years ago. And another thing that I realized was that and this was very difficult for me. Remember what I just shared with you about my ex-wife? That relationship was not what do you say, like a fairy tale either. It was very, very hurtful, very painful too. So after all of these years, and when I kind of like, okay, it began after a couple of years in this journey, I began, okay, I'm ready to walk again. And I began looking at women, and I realized that the women, they looked very different at me now than they did 20 years ago. And also, I realized that my mind didn't function like it did 20 years ago. And one thing about that is that I realized that a lot of men has these things. That's one thing. But also, if like I was in a relationship that was very manipulating, that was very sucking all of my energy out and playing with my mind all the time. Some people call this a narcissistic relationship or a narcissistic person. I cannot put that description on it. I can say that it looks like a narcissistic relationship, what I was in. So, two things about that. The first was the woman looking at me. I realized that I had so much insecurities around women because I was so afraid of going into the same thing as I came out of, not once, but twice. And I was like, that's not going to happen again. But also, I released a lot of things. I'm going to share more about that. So I got more and more confident, but not like protected myself, but actually coming from the inside. Again, I'm going to share more about this. But coming back to the thing with the mind, the thing is that in midlife, and probably I'm going to share this in a moment too, it is a fact that for most men, I can relate to men, so that's why I say men. For most men, the brain is shrinking in midlife. I mean, shrinking. And if you put on top of that, that relationship of manipulation and cheating and just all the time messing around with the mind, it was like my mind didn't work at all. I was running around or walking around or sitting or lying down in just a fog. Couldn't see anything. I didn't understand anything. And what I also realized after when I woke up here and I was like, wow, I'm in midlife, I realized that my libido was not the same at all either. And it could be a fact because of that relationship, but, and I'm going to be open and honest about this to the men listening to this, I realized it. All in all, it was also like I realized that I was beginning to wake up to this new way of living, of this new way of being. And at the same time, what happened to me was that all of these years, I've been an entrepreneur. I've been building other people's businesses. I've been a coach and a mentor, helping other people with their business. And I built my own business and was successful about it. I sold my business. I've been growing my family with my daughter. I travel around the world. I had a very big, nice penthouse apartment and traveling around the world with some of the top names in the world in personal development. And still, all of this, I understood. Sorry if I'm jumping a little here, but I understood and realized that all of that had a price. All of those years being so busy had a price. So, on top of me finding myself after the crash from that relationship, I also woke up and I was like, okay, I've been pretty successful in many areas in my life. I built the businesses, I sold the businesses, I grew the family, I got divorced, and that was even before the crazy narcissistic relationship. I had the big penthouse apartment, I had the new car, traveled the world around, and I still kept asking myself, now what? Is this all there is? I became curious about midlife. And I became curious about being a man in midlife. And also, I realized, at least in my country, that here it's pretty normal that women speak about the midlife crisis, but I didn't really hear any men speaking about it. And I became more and more curious. And I also began to understand that midlife is a transition for men. And it's kind of like a transition into the next phase. Then I became even more curious. So to answer the first question that I started this video with was, what is midlife? And here in this video, focused on midlife for men. And what I realized is that, first of all, midlife, it's our 40s, 50s, 60s. That's the period of time for many men where we experience this transition. But for many men, it's not like we sit down and think, okay, now I'm in this transition. It's more like a lot of things are going on in our life. And I'm going to share a couple of things here, but it's a transition into the next phase, which brings me to the second topic of this video. What are the biggest hurdles in midlife for men? And as I began to look into what happens to men in midlife and looking at myself as an example, I became more and more aware that this is not some small stuff going on. Not at all. This is a transition into the last part of our life. As I speak now, it might be very well indeed that we will think differently in 15 years from now about this. And that might be because of science and technology and all of this. And I'm not going to go into that in this video either. I'm going to focus on the topics. But the thing is, I became aware that our body, our brain, our functioning as a man, our libido, aka our bedroom performance, our happiness, our purpose, our fulfillment diminishes for most men in midlife. And men become more grumpy, less vibrant, less energetic, depressed, and even suicidal. That's a fact. From my own experience, I realized these things. And I also, when I began to look into all of this, I also realized that the data from scientific research showed the same things. And I also realized it from other men. I began understanding when I spoke with men in midlife, they didn't think about it as a midlife crisis, but they saw that their life was different. They experienced their life in a different way. And then I started a free Facebook group a few months ago, as I speak now. And I ran an ad to the group. I was curious, do other men feel like this? I wanted to attract men who resonated with my experience, who saw themselves in the same way, men who felt something was missing in their life, men who felt they were not on top of their game anymore in midlife. And as I speak now, we are close to 1,000 men in the group. It's a free Facebook group. And from the conversations that I had with men in the group, I understand, also from outside the group, friends, people I meet, I understand that many men do experience the same thing. I also understand that a lot of men not do not necessarily like to speak about these things. So that's kind of also for me, it's it's growing inside of me to begin speaking about it and hopefully help other men opening up and speak about these things instead of just becoming more and more grumpy, but actually just flourish in midlife, which I believe is very possible. So what the men in the group and the men that I spoke with and for myself was experiencing was something like body begins to hurt. Like wake up in the morning, can't even go out of bed, or the knee hurts, or the back hurts, or hurts and pain in the body. And also the fact that most, and that would be most like nearly everyone, didn't at all, and they realized this, look like they did in their 20s or 30s. And now I'm not only speaking about the face and wrinkles and like that, I'm also speaking about how the body looks. That's the posture of the body, but also the muscles on the body fat, the way they walk, and things like that. So not looking and feeling like in their 20s or 30s. And also less joy and happiness. And less libido, aka performance in the bedroom. I've even spoke with men who said, I don't care about that anymore. Relationships that might not be as the men want the relationship to be. And that may include that for some men they are in a relationship, but it's not the right relationship. I don't feel love and I want to feel love. I want to feel intimacy. I want to feel juiciness in my relationship. I've heard that over and over and over again. And other men being single and wanting to go on dates again, or being single and actually wanting to be in a relationship. But if you take all of the things of being not looking and feeling like in the 20s and 30s, bodies not feeling like in 20s, 30s, bodies not looking like in the 20s and 30s, and also the fact the brain is not functioning at the same time, maybe the smile is not the same as I experienced, and also that it's more depressive than positive experience of life. Then going on dates or improving the relationship will be and is for many men very difficult. Seems like it's very, very uphill. So why would I even bother? I'll sit back in my couch, I turn on the TV, I look at something, or I scroll on the telephone, and life is just passing by. Can you relate to any of this? And just be honest with yourself. That's an invitation. For me, I began to experiment myself. How could I feel more energy? How could I live more purpose? How could I begin dating again? And please keep in mind that my relationship experience was a disaster. It actually nearly took my life. And how could I smile again? Could I even be happy and smile again? How could I improve my brain? How could I find myself after all of those years with so much busyness, hunting the next goal, hunting the next achievement? How could I find Michael again? And for me, I've experienced the difference. For me, it's also become some kind like a vision for me now to live my next years as my best years yet from the inside, from here, finding my purpose and living my purpose, going on dates again. Maybe if the right one turns up, but not me chasing after her. If life is like that, and if it happens, maybe a relationship again, but dating first. That was kind of like a very, very, very important thing for me to begin figuring out. Can I be on dates again? Libido, aka bedroom performance. How could I improve? How could I? Was it even possible without pills and medicine to actually feel full of, experience a lot of libido? And I'm going to share those things with you too. And also health and fitness. Was it even possible for me to look and feel my best? To look and feel like I was in my 20s or 30s? Is it possible building a business again from my heart, full of purpose, helping a lot of men, doing the same, sharing all of these things? And then my last question in this start of this video was, how is midlife for you? How is midlife for you? And do feel free to share that in the comments. And if you want to take a look at that free group, the Facebook group, I will provide a link for you in the description below this video, all right? If you want to get some insights of what have been working, what have not been working for me in midlife, and also be a part of a growing community, I invite you to like this video, subscribe to this video, and hit the bell, because then you will see when there's a new video available for you around all of this. For now, I'll just say peace, love, and harmony, and some energy also. And thank you for being here.